Hey everybody, it's Andre Shirdan with the Eaglesoft Field Guide, and I'm here with Misty Freeman, who I see every year at this time. Happy holidays. It's good to
Happy
see you again.
holidays. Yes, good to see you too.
And as usual, we're going to talk about the dreaded by some and looked forward to by others end of year process.
Yes. So I'm heading into my 16th end of year with Patterson.
Wow.
And every year we try to do something a little bit extra to help customers prepare. So we call customers and make sure they have the information they need. And we post things on our FAQ or knowledge base site. I've been posting on your page as well, and
Yep.
just hoping we can get as much information out there as possible.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of people who are new to Eaglesoft this year. Post pandemic, we saw a lot of new people taking over responsibilities at the front desk. And the message I always have to people who are doing their first end of year, if you've been here 6 months, you've done 6 end of months. So the end of year is just another step, another layer, and it's really not much more. So don't be afraid of the process. Don't worry about it. It's really simple. And this is why we do this every year, so that you kind of have some guidance and some suggestions of things to do and to prepare for, but also some of the things that, some of the reports you should run that aren't typically part of end of year, but are a good idea to run too. And some cleanup that you could do at end of year too. So,
Yes.
so let's dig in. Let's talk about some suggestions.
Sure.
What are some of the suggestions that you have, and some of the thoughts that you have for end of year this year?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I can say to be ready for end of year is make sure you're current on your end of period processing as far as end of days and end of months, because that's probably one of the most common things that we see is I need to run my end of year, and we look and we haven't done end of month since, July. So we've got to get caught up on that. And this year we did record a new webinar that has lots of options for you. And it's very detailed on how you can get caught up easily with end of year. So that's something I actually posted on your page a little bit ago in November.
Yep. And I'll tag that same page in this conversation so that people, instead of having to go look for it, I'll just make sure there's a link in this video so that everybody has that too. So, and again, we're trying to make this sort of a one-shot deal. There's some really good best end of year report threads in the Eaglesoft Field Guide, but I also like to link back to the end of year pages in the Patterson FAQ site. So you'll have both places to go back and forth to find some of the, some of your colleagues' solutions, but also the information directly from Patterson's FAQ page. So, so what are some of the key reports that people should be running? What are some of the things that we should be doing before, protocols we should be doing before we get to the end of year? Some of the things we could clean up before we get to that part.
Yeah. I would say the first thing that you want to do before processing your end of year is inactivate any providers that no longer work in the practice before end of year. That way, after end of year is over, if you go to process a report, they're not showing in your drop-down list for your report filters. So get those inactivated. And, I like to always make sure that any outdated custom schedule hours are deleted. Just remove them.
Yep.
Yeah, get them out of here. You just never know when they're going to come in and cause a conflict with some new custom hour that you're trying to make, or, it can cause confusion when you have 100 custom hours in there and only 10 of them are relevant. Yeah, so
I agree. Yeah, because you guys had vacation in 2012, it really doesn't have any impact on the current schedule. So it's a good time to get that out of there. So yeah, that's a good one. And one of the things I always suggest with doing the inactivation process is pick a day where you're not going to see any patients and use that as your day, because you're going to have a lot of debits and credits that happen when you inactivate a provider. And it's a good idea to say, on December the 12th or whatever day you're going to pick. It'd be nice to do it on December the 29th or something like that. But it's a great time to just kind of get those folks out of there, but also not mess up a normal day sheet with a lot of in and out procedures. So pick a day that you can do it. Or if you want to stay an hour later one day, inactivating providers doesn't take a long time.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if you work until, so let's say you do it today, and at the end of the day, you render end of day, and then you go back in and you inactivate providers. So now you have 2 December 19th. We're recording this December 19th. So 2 December 19th, one we know is our end of day, and the other one is just a transactional administrative function. So it's a great way to kind of clean that up and get it off of your day sheets. So
absolutely. Yeah. And there's other cleanup items that you can do. Not as important, but I think that the providers are for sure number one most important. And then if you want to update your service fees, you can do that before or after your end of year. Either way is fine. Yep. Just make sure you have a report of what your fees are before. Just in case you don't like the new fees when you update them and you want to change a few of them back to what they were before, you have that report to look at. So
that's a good one. And I didn't have that on my list, but yeah, that's a good one. If you go to list service codes and print the report there, you'll have a list of all of your service codes plus your master standard fees, so that if you do make some changes and you didn't, and remember, you can't see what they were yesterday if you've updated them.
Right.
So it's a great way to do it. So I'm going to put that on my list of end of year. That's also just a great idea. Even if you're not going to, because most people, even if they don't do it January 1, at some point in the year may do a fee increase.
Yes.
So at least we'd have our 2022 fees in a report someplace, saved possibly in your smart doc, your practice smart doc.
Yeah, I think it's great to save that in your practice smart doc. And I think sometimes it's confusing because, math is so fun. Updating by an increase of 10% is not the same as decreasing by 10%. So you can't just undo it. You really got to have that report if you want to change something back.
Yeah. So. And so let's talk, since we're on the fees, let's talk about this for a minute. So let's talk about fee increases. And for one, everybody should know that if you're going to do a fee increase, yes, you can do service code by service code if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But the impact that's going to have is it's not going to, you'll have no ability to have that impact your scheduled services and existing treatment plans. So yes, that's a way to do it, but that's not the best way to do it, or not the recommended way to do it. Yeah. And the recommended way to do it would be through the utility of change service fees, right?
Yes. By a percentage or by a dollar amount. And if you do a percentage, you can round it to the nearest quarter or $half or whole dollar, however works best for you.
Only dollars, please.
Dollars.
I don't want any cents.
No sense.
OCD me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can choose to go ahead and update your planned services on your schedule or treatment plans. You can do one or the other, or you can do both when you're updating those, depending on, what kind of promises you've made to your patients. If you have a treatment plan and they signed off on a treatment plan and you want to honor those prices, you can choose not to do that, or you can choose to do that if you have a little note that says subject to change. Depending on how long it is before they come in to have those services completed. Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to share my screen just so everybody can see in Eaglesoft what we're talking about. It's under utilities, and there's a change service fee right there. Mm-hmm. And now we can say we're going to change by 6%, which is the cost of living. And we are going to round to the nearest dollar. And here's where we're talking about we can update treatment plan fees, and we can update on scheduled fees.
Yeah.
And this is something I like to do this. Honestly, I do this once a month. I don't know. It sounds crazy, but I come in here and I will do this once a month, and I will update all of my fees by 0%. And this is just because I'm so anal, because what happens is sometimes Bob Smith will come in and he'll change insurances. And now he's got fees under his treatment plans for MetLife when now he's in Delta Dental. So I do this on a regular basis. The only thing I will tell you, and please, everybody pay attention, when you hit OK, you're going to get a bunch of pop-up, warnings. It's going to tell you a bunch of things that you need to read through. This is not like signing up for a new Google account and just scrolling to the bottom and saying, OK. You really need to read through because there's some things here where they're going to close existing pre-authorizations. There's a couple things that are going to happen here. So just read through every step. And there's a bunch of, a bunch of information about how to do this in the field guide and the FAQ page. But here's what we were talking about, just so everybody knows.
Yeah. And I recommend doing this also while you're not seeing patients and everybody else is out of the system, and make sure you have a backup before you do anything like this. So.
Yeah. I always tell people any utilities you're going to run, just to, cover your rear end and have the Patterson Technology Center on the phone with you if you want to do something like this, just to say, hey, this is the first time I'm doing this. Could you hold my hand as I do it? And I'm sure they're happy to do it for you. Yeah.
And we can schedule a time. We have this new thing we've gotten in the last, I want to say year or so. It's an outbound dialer. So if you want to schedule something in the next 2 weeks, it'll just call you at that time. So, and usually gets there within like a 15-minute interval of what you've asked. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's great for us too. So we don't miss those things since it's not manual anymore.
Awesome.
Great.
Cool.
So you had asked about additional reports as well. So we have a series of reports that automatically go with your end of year. And even if you don't print them, they do in the later versions of Eaglesoft automatically save to your smart docs. So you can access them even if you don't print them, because some of them are really long and take up a lot of paper. But I do recommend, in addition to those reports, running a day sheet for the year too. That's one that I think would be great for everyone to have a year's total with the day sheet.
So let's go down the list, because I actually have a list of reports that I suggest that people run at the end of the year. I'm going to bring it up here on my screen so I can see what I'm talking about here. So what I suggest that everybody run in, this might be some things that are on the end of year reports, but here are some of the reports that I suggest. The service code productivity report, because that shows a gross production. You build out code by code for the year. So that's one that I suggest that everybody have. The insurance company productivity report, and that's going to show the gross production you build out broken down by insurance company for the year. All right. And these are reports that after you start the new year, you might not be able to get. So we want to make sure we're getting these ahead of time. I always run my patient analysis report, and I run this every month anyway, but I always run an end of year patient analysis report. So I get an idea of the number of active patients, number of new patients, all that kind of stuff on that report every year. And people have heard me talk about the PAR report all the time. So patient analysis report, the service type productivity report. The general format of that report to view the monthly and yearly production totals for each service type. And this year, a lot of people have adopted some of the new service types that I've been talking about, like a service type for perio maintenance and some things like that. So it's a good time to run that. And again, try to compare apples to apples year to year. You just mentioned this, the day sheet, using the January 1st to December 31st, or whatever your last day you're going to be working is going to be. The managed care analysis report or managed care utilization report, either one of those. So if you're using fee schedules and or coverage books, it'll show your total fees, your total standard fees, and then the total adjusted fees charged out. And then I just added to the list that service code report that we talked about to get their master standard fee.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. And the best way that I think to do that is number one, make sure you do those before you run your end of year.
Yep.
I like to do December end of month, then run the reports, and then do end of year, because if you do your December end of month separately first, you can run those reports by other range of end of months and just choose your January through your December end of month, making it easy to filter.
Yep.
And then after you have all those reports, you can save them to SmartDoc, you can print them. I would recommend doing both. Then you can run your end of year.
Yeah. And that's a good tip, because a lot of times you'll run your end of year and they go, oh, you know what, or your end of month, and then realize there's some other stuff you needed to do or whatever. So it's a good idea to get it all done first. So
yeah,
good tip.
Yeah. Now you can run your end of month for December with with the end of year. I like to do it separate, just in case.
Yeah,
so
I do too.
Yeah.
Belts and suspenders.
Exactly.
whatever it takes. And what are you finding of the number of people who are using the end of period processing, the automatic end of year processing? Yeah.
Not a lot of people are using automated end of period processing. I see that most folks are doing their end of days manually. And if they are using any automated, it's for their end of months. And if you're doing it automated for end of month, go ahead and do it automated for end of year too. And when you're doing the automated end of year, I like to do it like maybe the second Friday or, the second week of January. You just have to make sure that your end of year is done before your January end of month. And if you have your end of month set to ran the last business day of the year or the first business day of the next month, of the month, then make sure that you give plenty of time between that to do your end of year, so you have a couple of weeks to get your reports in order. We do have an answer in our knowledge base that has recommended dates and times of running those based off the hours that you work.
Okay. So let's be clear. Based on what you're saying, because I know that I just got the question in the back of my head, because I always think like people are going to ask me this question. So you're telling me that I don't have to run my end of year on December 31st?
Right. You don't. You have some time. You just have to get it done before you run January end of month.
Yeah.
Because it just automatically includes all of the end of month since the last time you ran end of year, and it doesn't know. Yeah. It doesn't know what you've done. So just make sure that you run it before January. It won't include any of your January end of days for you, which is perfect.
So let's talk about this, because one of the biggest confusions of people who are using Eaglesoft as a new user, they're switching from another software. I always kind of describe what a day is and what a month is and what a year is. And the easiest way for me to describe a month is to look at a bank statement. A bank statement, a monthly bank statement, is not always June 1st to June 30th. It's the days since the last end of month.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a period of time and not a series of days. Just like end of day is a series of transactions and not a time period during that day. So It's from the last end of day to the next end of day. That's the time period. So
yes. And you're doing this so that your goals and your reporting all show reset on those days. So you can keep track of your financials. And I like to always say it's best to do that so you can, forecast what you're going to be doing in the future. And if you forecasted low, what can you do to get more patients in? And what can you do to increase services for the patients that you do have coming in? You can think about all of that when you're looking at those reports.
Yeah. And statistical data is becoming more and more important to a lot of offices. So many offices are using, very good analytical tools like Practice by Numbers or Dental Intel. If they want to have, you want to be able to compare apples to apples, because if your month is, the last 72 days because you're not doing end of month, then your statistical data is going to be off comparing your reports in Eaglesoft to your reports in Practice by Numbers or Dental Intel. So you want to run those reports and have them coincide and make them, apples to apples, right?
Yeah. And if you're not very good at remembering to do that every day and it's your job to do it, set it up to be automated so that you don't forget.
Is there a webinar on automated processing?
There is.
Okay, so make sure we'll get that link down here so that everybody has that. So I'm going to link a bunch of things so that everybody has a chance. We're midway through December, so this is a good time to understand how a lot of these things work. And if you're not using these functions, one, you may be on an old version of the software and you may want to consider doing your updates. At this point, you may want to consider doing it in January anyway, but it's time to start considering some of these things. And we have a new ADA form coming out. As of January 1, we're on the 2019 form, which makes no sense because we're 2023, but we're on the 2019 form. So there's some new things that we need to consider anyway as the year turns over. So
yes, yeah. And if you're on version 21 and above, you'll have that automated. And this is upgrade season as well. A lot of IT likes to get in there when your offices are closed for the holidays and do your upgrades for you. And if they're doing that, take advantage of these new features to help you be more efficient in your practice so you can focus on other things.
Yeah. Well, talking about end of year, end of month, end of day, a big part of the end of year processing for everybody sometimes is they come in, they start it, and then all of a sudden it stops. And everybody freaks out, and I'm sure the phones light up at the PTC. I know that what happens at the end of year in the Facebook group. Don't worry. More than likely it's going to start back up. It does stall at a point in some softwares, but it's still running. It just takes a break, but it'll probably go again. Sometimes it takes forever, and don't worry about it. There's actually a thread in the Facebook group called "If it's stuck on a spinning wheel, taking forever, don't worry about it." Yes. It'll start back up.
There's two types of what we call lockups. One is because the SmartDoc printer is not working, and you can usually tell because it says saving to SmartDoc in the window that goes white. You can see that it says that. That is something that call the PTC or chat one of us and chat the PTC, and we can help with that. If it just kind of turns white and it doesn't say saving to SmartDoc, it's still working. It just looks like it's not doing anything. You're just not seeing that progress bar move. You got to think it's going through every single transaction that you did all year long or since the last time you ran end of year. So it can take some time, especially if you are a large practice that sees a lot of patients in a day. It'll take longer the more transactions that you have.
And this may be a good time to actually just chat the PTC and have them check to make sure your SmartDoc printer is set properly so that you're not going to run into this. Because it may work on a daily basis because you're only doing it a single day. But when you're talking about, again, thousands of transactions, it may be something else to do. So, and then here's the other thing about remaining benefits, end of year remaining benefits, what month that we want to choose, if we're going to do this January 2nd or if we're going to do this December 29th. What's that number look like for you?
So you want insurances that reset in January, right? So the first month of the year is January. So that's the number 1. So you want to do 1 and 1, January to January. Because if you do 1 and 12 and somebody has an insurance that resets in July, it's going to reset if you do 1 to 12. That's the biggest, I'd say that's the biggest mistake that I see happens is someone puts 1 through 12. That's January through December. And then they're off on just a few patients because most insurances do reset in January.
All right. But or if they do it January 2nd,
yes,
it's going to come up
defaults to 2.
Yeah. So make sure you change that back to 1 and 1.
1 and 1.
You got it. So, and that, again, these are really simple things, but sometimes when you're in the throes of it, you're just like, click, 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 and you're not even paying attention to it because sometimes it's further down in the list and you're not going through it. My thing is on every computer software that I've ever used and everything I've ever taught anybody how to use, I always say, start top to bottom, left to right, and you'll never mess up. It's, we see this all the time with people clicking has secondary insurance in the second column without making somebody the policyholder. And then they get into this loop of can't do it. And they don't understand why. It's top to bottom, left to right. And you won't have to worry about these kind of things. So,
yeah. And we have step-by-step instructions. If you're the type of person that likes that, everybody learns and functions a different way. So I like videos, some like written instructions. We have it for both, whatever you need.
And again, that's why this video every year has been like sort of a hub to send all this information out so that everybody has it, and again, some people are visual and they love seeing these videos, and some people just want to read the checklist, and we've got it covered either way. And again, that's why I want to make sure everything is linked in the notes under this video so that everybody has it. The bottom line is don't fear the end of year. It's not a big deal. We should just get t-shirts that says don't fear the end of year. I'm going to trademark that.
We'll write a song too.
Copyright 2022 on Michigan. There you go. All rights reserved. So, it's really, really simple, but we are all sort of thrown into using software, and if you weren't trained, and I find it's probably only about 40% of the offices that are in the Facebook group have ever really had training in the office. And typically that was when they first bought the software, and it could have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. So, January 1, start planning to have a certified Eaglesoft technology advisor come into your office and get you updated, especially on the new version of the software. There aren't a lot of changes, but the changes that are new are super helpful, like this automated end of period processing.
Yeah. And if you use it the right way, it can really save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle, a lot of worry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what are the good things that we want to cover on this video today?
So I think we covered a majority, your smart dock printer, making sure you inactivate your providers, making sure that you're caught up on end of period, most important things. We get a lot of questions after end of year as well. Like, was my end of year successful? Did I do it right? Or maybe, my balance, my numbers didn't reset. They still show like the whole year totals. What did I do? And maybe you closed out. Maybe you, during the end of year processing, it said, are you ready to print? And you hit yes, and you thought that was good enough. And then you closed something, and it might have printed your reports and saved them to SmartDoc, but there's another step where it says, are you ready to process your end of year? And you closed it.
Yep.
So there's different ways you can check that in the system activity log. And if you're on a later version, if you go to activities process end of period, it has a summary of when the last time everything was done in there.
I'm going to share my screen again so I can show everybody where that is. So utilities, all right, and system activity log.
Yes.
All right, and you should be able to see right there. That should be one of the last things you did. You should be able to see that you processed your end of year reports, and I never do it, so because I'm not on a real software. So
yeah, and if you click that drop down next to show, you can filter to just yearly processing.
There you go. Well, there you go. You should have that report. See, I haven't done mine since 2005.
Hopefully that's, nobody in real life.
No, this is not a real office. So yeah. But yeah, so that's a good way to check, and a lot of people, even if you don't know if you've done your end of month, there's your monthly processing you can see there, and it'll tell you what you did. So this is a good way to a lot of people miss this whole utilities tab to understand that there's a lot of good stuff in here if you have security clearance to do it, but there's a lot of good stuff here to be able to see, what's going on with your software.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up after end of year is, these report totals are not the same on these different reports. Yeah. So we get that a lot. And I think that it's really important to understand that not all of these reports, and I hate saying this, but are designed to match. And that's because they contain different things. Some of them do not contain, edits, so to speak, or deletions, or, if you change the service date on something, etc. So we do have a good answer on reconciling reports. And if you were to look at, say, production, for example, and you're comparing the production reconciliation to the provider history, well, the provider history doesn't contain deleted service, debit adjustments, and credit adjustments that impact production.
Yeah.
So you'll see a difference in those.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't match.
A good way that I try to explain that to people is, if I'm a provider and you posted a PA to me today, that's on my provider reports. It was posted. Now, was it taken off of me and then put to somebody else? That's on a different report. So that's an easy way to kind of explain it. So some reports show what was posted to me as a provider, and another report will show the debits and credits that happened to that provider today. So different reports are going to show different things, and comparing one report to another sometimes is a big mistake. And again, you're comparing apples to oranges. Yes, they're both fruit, but you're still making a comparison that's not a fair comparison.
Right.
So
exactly.
And end of days versus end of dates, completely different reports.
Yes.
So if you're going to do that, be very consistent with, if you're comparing apples to apples, days to days, dates to dates, and let's be really clear about one is the date of the transaction and one is the day that it showed up on an end of day report. Two different things.
Yes. And you can backdate services And so those show up, even if, today's December 19th, they're going to show up on my end of day for today, even though I backdated them for, say, December 1st.
Okay.
So make sure when you're comparing by the same filter as well.
So let's talk about that. So December 29th, I come in and I do my end of year reports, and then I happen to stop by the office on New Year's Eve because I left my really good scotch at the office, right?
Yeah.
And I realized there's mail there, and hey, I want to post these payments, and I want them to go to my end of year.
So
good luck, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just going to be, you're going to need to do another end of day, another end of month. So a second end of month, so to speak, for December, and then a second end of year for 2022. Yeah. And then you'll want to manually add those together because you've already got your end of year reports. There's only a couple that can be what we call recreated. Basically, there's only a couple that can be filtered for a specific range of end of days or end of months, etc. Yeah. Some of those reports are live, and once they're reset back to 0, you can't run them again for historical. So manually adding those together.
Here's the Uncle Andre advice. Don't worry about it. Put it in January. It's January's money. That your bank statement is closed. It's just like walking into your bank and saying, you know what, I want this check to be in my June bank statement. They're not going to do it. Eaglesoft's not going to let you update a year. So just it's found money. You're ahead of the game for your numbers for January of 2023. Yeah. Just let it go. Let it go. Relax.
I think there's a lot of questions sometimes too, or wonder about, what if I put in the insurance claim last year, but I just received the payment this year, how does that affect their remaining balance of deductible, et cetera.
Yep.
And all of that. And you know what? You're in a new year. So you got paid in a new year. The services were rendered last year, but you got paid in a new year. So those things are going to vary based off what you're looking at. Are you looking at money you've received, or are you looking at when the services were provided and when insurance deducted from their remaining benefits? So
yeah, it all washes in the end because if only you were open one day and closed the next as a business. Other than that, this is a continuum, and you're going to be doing this for the next 30, 40 years. So just let it go, and it'll all wash in the end. Relax.
Yes. Yeah. It's not coming out of anybody's bank that day that you post the payment in Eaglesoft. So
exactly. Yeah. Not a big deal. Yeah. Well, anything else you want to make sure we cover before we wrap this up for the day?
I think just understand that there's always somebody here to help you if you need. We do have some holiday.
I was going to say, what are holiday hours this year?
So we'll be closed this year on Friday. So that is December the 23rd. We're also closed on Monday, December the 26th. And then as far as New Year's for our employees, we are closed on January 2nd. And then new this year, we will be closed on January 16th. Okay. So that is for, why can I never remember holidays?
16th, is that Martin Luther King Day?
Martin Luther King Day, yes.
Gotcha, okay.
So kids are out of school, banks are closed. Patterson is now closed on that date as well.
Okie dokie. All right.
Yeah, so giving our employees a break, a well-needed and well-deserved break for their holidays. And I'm sure that they'll also need it with the busy that they get during end of year and our phone calls. And just understand too, we are a little busier during end of year, probably towards the end of this week, especially the end of next week and through the first and second week of January. We are pretty busy with end of year questions and upgrade questions. So hang in there with us.
Yeah. And if it's not something, and I always tell people, if it's not something that's a real tech issue where you're having a concern, see if you can go through the FAQ, see if you can go through some of these videos that we've prepared for you, see if you can go through the Facebook group and find some of the answers you need. And unless it's really a pressing deal, because the last thing I want you to feel is stressed that you're waiting for somebody to get back for an answer that you could have found in moments. If it's a simple one, if it's a complicated one, you better make sure you get on the phone call as soon as possible. But we want to answer as many questions as possible. And the top questions, we hear it all the time, and this is why we've done this for years. So I think a lot of it is just simple stuff. Don't stress about it.
Yes, I think it's easy to get overwhelmed because you only do it once a year.
Exactly.
But there's information, and the steps are pretty simple when it
Cool.
comes down to it. So, yeah.
Well, Misty, thank you for doing this again, and have a Merry Christmas, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and happy holidays to you as well.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.